Thank you and good afternoon. I feel very paternal here, like I should be saying to everyone, move up to the front. But I trust you've all had a great first day of the forum. I just arrived a while ago, and it's interesting sort of walking out around the forum and seeing so many varied and interesting types of technology, all sorts of business enablers, and then you're going to listen to me, predictably, as an insurance industry leader, coming at the whole IoT piece from the perspective of safety and security. But I think what's most appropriate, without any further ado, is I'm going to play a short video which I think will give some good context around the research findings that I'm going to broadly talk through in the short time that I've had allotted. And this is really going to take you through the perspective that AIG has arrived at in terms of safety and security in relation to data sharing. So if you could play the video, please.
Benefits of the Internet of Things will only be achieved if we can figure out the path to smart, safe data sharing. We believe that smart data sharing will be the power of the new economy, and we're seeing it today.
Humans as animals need trust in order to cooperate. When you think about trust, you're really talking about enabling collective action. Whether that's, cavemen building a fire or sending a man to the moon, people have to be able to cooperate to do that. Digital platforms have been able to supply trust in a way that was previously impossible.
Citing things that we want to do at the UN when you're looking at the Sustainable Development Goals, but I think without data sharing, without public-private partnerships, we don't have a chance of meeting these goals by 2030.
We noticed a massive inflection point over the last year in this space, in the desire to share and the desire to put things together that never wanted to be put together before.
We saw the Safer Roads Challenge opportunity come out, and we said this is obviously exactly the kind of expertise that we don't have available, exactly the right kind of public-private partnership that can really help us.
We could use so many of the great capabilities that are out there today if only we're willing to share that information. If an employee can't trust the employer to share that data and doesn't have the confidence and the willingness to share that data, then we're not going to have an outcome that's going to achieve its full benefit.
Okay, thank you. So let me start off. I think when we all talk about IoT or the scale of the sharing economy, we hear lots of different dimensions. So I won't disappoint you by listing a couple up here. Obviously you're highly subjective, but estimations are that by 2025, the sharing economy could be as large as $335 billion US dollars, and in aggregate by the year 2020, the spending on the Internet of Things will grow to $14.1 trillion. And whilst I'm not going to quote the sources of those numbers, the fact is, we know the scale of the Internet of Things, and there's no doubt that we have well and truly reached the start of the next industrial revolution. The way we look at things is that the safe sharing of data should really be the coal that effectively powers the furnace of IoT. In other words, the benefits of IoT are not really possible without smart and safe data sharing. We believe that the smart and safe data sharing will power the new economy, and it's already happening today. So for example, if you think about 5 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, would you have thought that in an instant you'd be sharing photos of a newborn child with everyone that you choose to throughout the world? Would we have thought that we would be riding in a taxi and not having to take out our wallet to pay for that ride? Or would we thought about trusting strangers to stay in our homes based on a crowdsourced rating system on our smartphones. But yet we do. I think as a society, we've well and truly embraced the whole data sharing economy as a concept. So I think the questions are, what's going to surprise us in the next 5 years, and what will it take us to get there? So the research that I'm about to share is the third part in a series of AIG reports on innovative technology and risk that we've undertaken in the past 18 months. The survey and AIG reports can be found on the website, which you can see listed on the screen. In essence, we asked 400 individuals and 250 businesses in each of the 9 markets that you can see charted there on the map about their attitudes towards data sharing, and in aggregate there was nearly 6,000 individuals polled. And to our knowledge, it's the first global survey that's been undertaken on the data sharing economy. And in summary, we believe at AIG that the benefits of the data sharing economy far outweigh the potential risks, which we do believe, as you would imagine in the risk management business, that can be all mitigated if we work together. So essentially there's 3 key takeaways from this research that we've undertaken. First of all, that individuals and businesses can be persuaded to share data if they get something in return. So clearly there is a large addressable market here. The second part is we found that not every market values the same thing, and you'll see that in one of my exhibits a little bit later. So attitudes differ, and these attitudes will influence which capabilities, devices, and firms will ultimately be successful or otherwise. And thirdly, the other key takeaway is that there is a new kind of digital trust that's being built between individuals and businesses today. Individuals need to hear certain things from companies to say yes to wearables in the workplace, or yes to telematics in their cars, or health tracking devices. So the question is, what does this new digital handshake of sorts look like when technology is introduced, and how are we all going to become a part of that? The bottom line is that there are trade-offs here. So over 2/3 of businesses and consumers can be persuaded to share data if they believe that there's something in it for them, as I referred to before. We share search terms because we like the results. We put faith in 5-star ratings from strangers because we might like a convenient ride home. But you can see how that 75% breaks down across the different markets. The lowest rating, interestingly, being in what we would argue or position as the more developed economies, such as the US, Australia, and Germany, at around 70%. But I'm sure you'll all agree that that is a pretty high average overall. If we look at some of the winning and maybe losing attributes here from a business perspective, what companies are willing to share. Businesses globally, we found, are most willing to share data that improves safety and security of customers. So 59% of businesses that we spoke to were sort of saying that they were most likely to be persuaded if there was an improvement in the safety of individuals, and 55% ultimately if there was an improvement in productivity. The softer, maybe surprisingly to some people, the softer benefits were not as motivating. So sharing data to position the company as an innovator, or to be simply being seen to do the right thing, was not as interesting as some people may have perceived it to have been. So the reality is that businesses want benefits, tangible benefits to their businesses, but of course, as I said before, there are always going to be some trade-offs. So if we look at the number one driver in some markets versus the drag factor in others, the reality is the sharing economy is always going to have winners and losers. And obviously the winners will be influenced by what people are willing to share. And as you can see here on the chart, the number one driver of sharing in some markets can in fact be the number one drag in others. For example, the US and Australia companies are most likely to share data when it will improve financial performance or reduce company insurance costs, ironically, or improve recruitment, which happen to be the three least motivating factors in Italy, in Singapore, and in China. So why does all this matter? Well, it matters because we need to understand that, I guess like all the businesses that we operate in, markets no two markets are really the same. An investor can optimize proof of concept spending in markets that are proxies for each other. A startup can rely on data sharing and can scale up across borders knowing how their capabilities are going to be perceived. Or a multinational firm can know how to approach consumers in foreign markets based on what they value most. We took a look at the willingness of individuals to wear a device provided by their employer, which is pretty interesting. And you might ask, is there any consistency across the markets? To which the answer is yes, and it's all about safety. So individuals are most willing to share the environmental conditions of their work environment, so their elevation, for example, the weather, safety hazards, for instance. And to varying degrees, individuals are willing to wear a device provided by their employer to enable their safety in the workplace. In terms of taking a look at how interested companies are and their willingness to pay, our research found that the global average of companies saying yes to wearables, for example, is 55%, and those companies saying yes to gamification-style telematics is sitting at about 58%. And you're probably thinking, why did we ask this? Well, as the white paper can tell you, AIG's invested in an industrial-grade wearable solution called Human Safety Condition, and we've partnered with one of our clients, Europcar, on a gamification app that uses telematics, and obviously that's going to be instrumental for us as we look to lower claims costs, auto insurance claims costs across the different markets that we operate. So the next question really tested us, to what degree are you interested and are you willing to pay for it? The answer is simply yes. People are interested and willing to pay. Companies are willing to pay on average between $400 to $900 per employee for these types of solutions. So in the US and probably Singapore as well, I'd imagine that's about the cost of a regular type of cell phone plan, so very affordable. The degree of interest tells us something about the market. It tells us that there is an interested paying market for wearables at work and fleet telematics, so there is definitely a market for these two solutions. So I guess the challenge is, how do we establish this sort of aspect of digital trust between individuals that supply the data and and to corporations? Very critical. And the way we work is changing, obviously. I mean, first of all, we saw of course, the Industrial Revolution, where from a pragmatic perspective, workers needed to live close to factories. Cities were built around factories. They got crowded. Suburbs popped up. Cars were invented. Commuting became popular. Now, we're working from home, checking email, always online from morning to night, always available. So in the data sharing economy, where we work is even more attached to us through wearable devices, telematics. So it's a new kind of handshake, if you like, between the two parties. So we need to sort of understand what sort of risk that presents and how that needs to be managed. Let's look at the customer's view, first of all. So customers need to hear a few things from the companies. They need to understand that the company is responsible for keeping data private. And I'm not going to preach about the varying types of data privacy legislation that exists across our different marketplaces, but I know that we're all aware of the importance of that. And the company should also be telling consumers if that information is being collected. but 72% of the customers that we surveyed wanted an option to opt in rather than opt out, and 71%, interestingly, wanted to be able to pick what data is shared with the company. So basically, if customers believe that the data is safe, they will be happy to share it. So from a business's point of view, businesses acknowledge they must do the following. They must notify their customers that the data is being collected. They should and must establish a clear policy to ensure these individuals know the level of monitoring that a firm is doing. And businesses also agree that they need to allow the customers to opt in rather than opt out. And finally, companies would like individuals to agree to monitoring as a condition of their engagement. And except for the last one, individuals agreeing to monitoring, it looks like businesses and individuals are aligned, and it's okay that there are differences, because trust, as we all know, is a two-way street. But the important point is understanding what those differences are, to which this survey has helped us understand. So in terms of consumers' level of trust in companies to share data, this was interesting. We've taken our trust level test in our research scope to economies like Japan, China, Singapore, and Australia. And the results, again, are based on research across 400 consumers and 250 businesses in each of these countries. The trust level, interesting, towards technology companies is fairly low in Singapore, Japan, and Australia. Government agencies and insurance companies, this is not a plug here, but are among the most trusted companies in Singapore, China, and Japan. And in all of these countries, interestingly, we found one commonality, which is that the only one category of business that are more trusted than government agencies and insurance companies were doctors and physicians. So finally, to end on a positive note, the question we saw most agreement on between businesses and individuals is when we asked, do laws need to be updated to accommodate new data sharing business models, to which both roughly 90% of groups said a resounding yes. So whether regulations are actually updated to meet what technology makes possible is yet to be seen, but redefining the trust in the digital age between customers and businesses is an opportunity for us all to work together. So again, I'd encourage you all to take the opportunity to access that web link that you saw earlier, and take advantage of reading the white paper and looking at these survey results in entirety. So very, very honoured to talk to you all today. Thank you very much for your time.